Hello, worldwide internet. Welcome to another captivating episode of the Snap No Tap podcast. I'm Tony Cecchine. We're with Joe Cardinal, and everybody, including our surprise guests, are all out sick. And I've been battling my yearly January nasal cold. So we're battered, but we're not broken. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Tony, good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
Glad
What's
you're among the mobile right now. We're down and out, a lot of us, with the illness.
Yeah, I've been battling this cold. I get them once or twice a year. My nose has been broken like 5 times. So I'm very susceptible to it's always in my nose. So I'd rather it be done now. The holidays are over. Just get it over with. And I normally have a cold that lasts from 7 to 10 days. So it started, I believe, Tuesday that just passed. So it's going to probably last most of next week too, unless there's a miracle. So I don't know. Do you believe in miracles? We need Al Michaels here,
So you're pretty confident it's not COVID?
Oh, no, certainly. I don't have any of the symptoms outside of just stuffed up in my nose, that's it. And based on everything I've read, the COVID lasts just like the Omicron variant only lasts 1 to 3 days, and for me, I'm way beyond that already. But no bronchial problems, no breathing problems. Breathing, I can't breathe through my nose, but through my mouth, I'm fine. No respiratory problems, I should say.
It just seems with COVID that they're always like the symptoms vary enough that it seems like almost anything could be COVID, like the way the list of symptoms of just anything where you're feeling bad could possibly be it. So that's the whenever I feel off, I'm like, oh, is this finally it? Do I have it? I don't know.
Well, COVID is real. People have died. I know people who have died from it. It's very, very serious, but you can't like stub your toe and think you have COVID. Colds are always there, flus and just other things, just food poisoning, upset stomach, whatever, we all have those. So it is what it is. Anyhow, I'm checking something here because I'm getting like a warning. It looked like something was blinking. I can't tell without my glasses. So normally when I do, everybody that knows me knows I do not like Zoom. I'm not a fan of Zoom. But normally when like you're talking, you'll pop up on the screen so I can watch and see what you're doing. But for some reason today, you're not popping up. Unless you have that disengaged.
Well, not intentionally. So I can look around while we're talking here and see if I can change that. So you're still not seeing
that. Because the viewing audience doesn't want to see me. They tune in to see your face. So I don't know if they're seeing your face or not.
Well, actually, that I should address something. This is an interesting segue because I saw in one of the comments to one of our videos, someone actually picked up on a habit of mine that when I talk, when I'm, let's say we're doing our plugs or whatever, that I have a habit of looking away and turning away, especially when I'm going on a long monologue. And I've noticed that myself, and I've had to analyze it. And I realized really this is a good way to kind of give some people, like our audiences, like a view behind the curtain of what's going on. Because obviously, like when I'm here using the Zoom program, when I start talking, I have to look at you, Tony. So I have to look at you, and it's like looking at the sun. I can't just keep that focus straight ahead. I have to veer my head to the side.
I believe that. Yeah, I've heard that before from many people throughout the years. But
so I
see you. It looks like you have new glasses.
Well, I was wondering to see if you could pick that off. Very good with your
Well,
power of observation, which is something very important for self-defense, isn't it? To
it
keep.
is. And and yes, you're always constantly, it's like weird. You're like a sadist, okay? You're not content being, like the
Well, I'm training with you, so
everybody's
that
opinion
definitely
except
means
for,
maybe a
well,
masochist.
no, you want to hurt people because you want to constantly like keep on improving your looks and make us all feel very insecure, and to most of the world, you're the best looking man in the world, except for one person, of course, who voted for Scott Hall.
Big lie. Yes, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, it's a shame. Well, you know what? I think there's some history between you and her, and I think that history needs to be. I think you need to review it and perhaps make amends somehow or another. And maybe we can have another go at it let's say in the summer, with your new glasses, maybe.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, like I said, I have teams of people looking into this. My lawyers. There's some inconsistencies, shall we say, in some of the counting of the votes, irregularities, these and this against a lot of chances for foreign interference. So, yeah, again, take everything with a grain of salt. There's a lot of fake news out there and misinformation, and I hate to see you being taken in by things like that, Tony.
Well, if you, I don't know what your shopping habits are, but you might be able to kill two birds with one stone because you may need help in overturning Melody's vote. So, are you by any chance in need of new pillows? Because there's a pillow guy out there that's, I guess he's got a lot of experience with trying to overturn elections and stuff. So maybe you could contact him.
Well, I know him from the before times. He was one of my suppliers. So yeah, we've had a long history. Yeah, going back. So, but yeah, good point. I'll look him up.
Yeah, please do. So speaking of looking up, oh, well, first of all, you got to do our plugs, and you have to look at don't look away when you make the plugs for the schools and stuff, because that's disingenuous.
It's tough.
You have to look.
So what's gonna happen though is I'm gonna spend like the next 90 seconds here doing our plugs, but then seared in my retina is going to be an outline of an Italian thug that I can't. It's just going to be a blind spot for the remainder of the podcast, honestly. So, but I'll do it for the people.
The bear, man. Come on, quit crying.
All right. I'm doing this for the people at home. The listeners, the fans out there demanded it. So, but yes, let's do our plug. So first and foremost, I think the biggest news that we've been talking about is the big countdown for the Tri-C program. So that, we're running out of time here. If you're looking to get that is the best way to get access to lifetime training with Tony, whether it's in person or online training, which Tony's doing with people nowadays because of COVID and everything that's going on. It's the best rate you'll ever get. There'll be future training options. Obviously, we're going to come back, but nothing worth a lifetime type commitment from Tony. Immediately, if you sign up, you get access to all his videos to download right away. So it's just it's a win-win for it's a great help for us here. It helps support Tony, and again, like I said, you lock in. So whenever you're able to swing by Tony's place to train, or you do it over, you can start scheduling training online. That's the best thing you can do. But because it's such a generous offer, it's honestly something we're realizing we're going to have to sunset because it's kind of too big of a commitment for the price that we're offering. So we decided to give a small window here for those who want to jump onto it, because we've had a lot of long-time people who've been interested in this program. So hopefully take advantage of this while the opportunity still lasts. It's less than a month now. We're going to take it offline. So that's first and foremost. Obviously, there's people out there. If you listen, if you enjoy this podcast, if you enjoy the free content on our YouTube site, please consider joining our monthly membership. We have 2 levels. The $10 a month, you get access to new videos that we put out on a regular basis that are not available for download. So that's something unique for the $10 a month. And there's also the $5 a month thank you level. Just like I said, it's kind of the Patreon model to help support us and our costs. It goes a long way, and it shows your appreciation for what we try to provide here, the information and entertainment we provide through this podcast and other means. We'd also like to, as I said, take this time, an opportunity to thank the schools that have supported us over the years, and they're good schools. The Akai Academy in the north side of Chicago, Rick Solo, who is one of a great guest that we had on here, a great guy. So best Muay Thai training you can get in the Chicagoland area. Also, a little heads up, I think they're moving locations. They're currently working on a new gym. So we'll have some announcements when they open and move to their new location. But right now, they said it's still going to be on the north side of Chicago, but congratulations to them. I think they're getting a bigger space, so they're expanding. So good for them, the Akai Academy again. And then there's Jason Bender Martial Arts and Fitness up in Andersonville area for gi jiu-jitsu, also some striking training there in judo. It's really the Miyagi-Do dojo of the north side, if I may. Great environment, very friendly. So definitely look Jason up. If you're looking for no-gi jiu-jitsu, look for 10th Planet Chicago. That's Josh Piscini, our good friend there. A lot of great things to say about him. He's an MMA fighter. Also, like I said, they have leg lock specific classes and things. If you're interested in that aspect of the game, look them up. And I think that's it for our plugs, Tony. So I think we're ready to go.
Yeah, good. And yeah, Josh and Jason Bender will be appearing on my, what do you call it? BJJ Fanatics video when it gets released. And I don't know anything about when. I don't know anything about price. I know I'm like Sergeant Schultz. I know nothing. I just show up and hook people and then wait to see whatever happens. I'm hoping for big, gigantic sales. That will probably be the make or break. If the sales are mediocre or less, then I'll probably end up just wrapping it up after all these years, because 2022 is going to be probably the biggest changes in my life, or at least in the last many, many years. Intentional changes, or I guess changes that I'm preparing for. Like when Kevin got killed and I lost the gym, that was totally unexpected, naturally. So that was not prepared. This will be it. So, and much of it, of course, is with my mom's medical condition. And then I will make the determination of am I going to continue teaching, or am I going to say that's it and never teach again? And 2022 and the release of this video is going to be part of it. And there's a lot behind the scenes, with logistics and so much to think about that I don't want to think about it today. But yeah, so that's why it's important. If you're going to do the Tri-C, you do it, sign up. And you get to split the cost with somebody else. It's just ridiculous when you think about it. You get all my videos and lifetime training for $1,500 per person. I challenge any other martial artist out there to make an offer like that. They won't. They can't, because it's a foolish thing. It's on my part, because I'm giving it away. So I have absolutely no regrets. I do get emails from people saying, "Oh, don't quit. Don't keep offering it." No, I'm sorry. 15 years I've offered it. It's going on this is the 16th year. So it's been a long time. So yep, that's it. But outside of that, yeah, we're just trying to get through this winter, as always. And since I live out here in the boonies and basically across the street from a lake, it's bad with the ice, the wind, this and that. And boy, I'll tell you, I'm my car, I haven't even started it in 3 days, 4 days, whenever, Tuesday. So I have to get out there today and try to start that car. How are you? How's the weather by you?
Treacherous. It's been all over the place. We've had, single digit temperatures for multiple days. And then when it warmed up, we had basically, I guess it would be sleet, kind of freezing rain, that put everything's like an ice skating rink out there this morning. So it's funny. I was walking the dog and almost basically wiped out a couple of times, and I'm just my luck that, I don't get hurt in training, but I'm going to end up, eating shit here, walking the dog. And, I could just feel it in my knees and everything. I actually ended up just walking where people's grasses were, because the snow was safer than the shoveled sidewalks. It was just like a sheet of ice. So And I think we're dropping back down to, single digits again tonight. So, I mean, this is the fun part, the January, February stretch where it just really, really punishes you. But then after that, everything's easy.
Yeah, and if we can get through this week, this upcoming week, with basically no accumulation of anything, we'll be halfway through January, because you're right. Sometimes the first week or two of March, we have issues, but yeah, January and February. So I'm just hoping for the best. But I do have to make a run. I have to get food and supplies. And I just hope I can do it this week one day. And yeah, it's I'm used to it, but I'm not used to it when I taking care of my mother like this. Growing up in Cleveland, the east side of Cleveland was much worse winters than Chicago by far. I mean, there's no comparison. So we're used to all of this crazy, crazy weather, but now it's kind of different, because of my obligations here. But how's your EMT school going?
First week is done. Actually, let me show you this monster book. This is my textbook. I don't know if you can see this thing. This
Let me
thing's
put
a
my
brick.
glasses on.
See this
Emergency, yeah.
Yeah, it's big. And it's, I guess, ironic. It's at the 50th anniversary of its publication. So, so first week's down. Most of it was, orientation type class where they kind of let you know what's what you got to wear, what you got to bring. I got to get all my shots up to date. So like I still got to get my Hep B shot coming up. So we'll see how that messes with my health to see if I have any reaction with that. And then we're doing no healthcare training yet. So we're all studying, the history of it. It's fascinating. You forget about the fact, like it was, I think they mentioned there was some, national report in 1966 where they really started to realize, hey, we need to have kind of a organized approach to emergency medicine. Prior to that, it was a lot of volunteer, a patchwork of different, communities trying to respond to these things, and it was, they didn't even have official ambulances back then. They just had kind of like souped up hearses, basically, because that was the only kind of car that was made to have people laid out horizontally in it, so it's just kind of interesting to see the evolution of that and how, you'd think societies would organize around that, but it took a long time for them to kind of have a national approach to that, and how that process has been evolving. And then the book, like I said, so beyond that, they kind of very early on, they're not pulling any punches about the nature of the job. I mean, you're going to be exposed to violence very likely in the job. Depending on the type of call you go onto, depending how you behave your health, you have to document the hell out of what you're doing because it's very likely you could be subject to lawsuits. And because of all those kind of situations and the stresses and the things, I mean, you're going to see things that are really going to be tragic. I mean, kids that are hurt and dead possibly. I mean, this is heavy shit. And they said, so to add on to all that, like because of all of that, EMTs, like a lot of first responders, they have a higher rate of suicide. So all this was like week one. This is welcome to the job. So just it's kind of a somber reminder, of what the first responders are subjected to, day in and day out. So I said, I mean, I was aware of these things, but it was just like kind of a concentrated. This is if you're going to work in this field, which is not necessarily why I'm learning it now. I want to just be able to be, competent in applying in case an emergency comes up, the skills. But learning about what they have to do on the job is very eye-opening.
20 years ago, I dated a paramedic, and we went to a function on the far south side. I think it's Palos Hills or whatever, the Sabre Room, and it was the retirement party for the second crew, the second year, I guess, of Chicago Paramedics. Okay, so so what I mean by that is I believe they started the paramedics in Chicago in either 1970 or 71, whatever. And then the second class. So this was the 30-year retirement of the second class of Chicago paramedic graduates, I guess you'd say it. So it was really interesting. And that was, I think, the only time I was ever at the Saber Room. I don't even know if the Saber Room's still there, but I guess it used to be a pretty big, big shot place. Like they used to have superstars go to the Saber Room, big time entertainers and stuff.
Oh, I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's been, I think it was 2002 that I went there. So that's 20. Well, that's 20 years, right? So, yeah. No, it's great that you're doing it, and I know that there's levels of EMTs and then of course paramedics and, and this and that. And I had a guy that I knew in Chicago that he had just retired. He was a paramedic. And I think we mentioned this once on the show because I was talking to him about this and he's like, if I forgot exactly how he worded it, but if you're going to be an invalid, so to speak, and need daily care and treatment, blah, 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 you want to get yourself a very good registered nurse. He says, but if there's a traumatic accident somewhere along the way, you want one of us. We're better trained for that. So everybody has their specialties, which is really important. It's like saying doctor. What are you, a doctor of what? So good. I'm glad you're doing it. I mean, years ago, I did the multimedia standard first aid. I did CPR, and that was the extent of it. And I studied a lot of physiology and, excuse me, of course, psychology and anatomy just for myself. And I knew a guy who was a martial artist, not a grappler. And he actually went even further than necessarily being a paramedic. And he became a mortician or a funeral director. He studied all of that because he wanted to really get to learn about nerves and, things on the human body to aid in his martial arts. So yeah, there's some people out there that really take it seriously. I was one of them, and I'm glad that you're one of them. You're taking it to another level because you're actually going to be certified, as opposed to me. I'm just certifiable.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, I'm just realizing more and more as life goes on that just as like I'm exposed, intermittently to potential violent situations where people's, health crisis has come up just in my, might be once every other couple of years. But obviously, as I get older and the people I hang with are older, it's going to become more and more likely. But it's just, to me, it's just another part of being prepared and being out there. But it is a big time commitment, It'll be interesting to see once I go through it, because I know there's a lot of different schools and approaches to that. Some of them are this is definitely trying to prepare you for the job. Ironically, most of it's an interesting range of students there. I'd say 90% of them are actually younger than my son, Ben, there. So I'm definitely like the old man, but there was actually a woman there so they kind of went through the class and asked everybody, hey, tell us about yourself, what your age is, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And there was actually one woman who would not disclose her age, which is fine. But she apparently works for an Amazon warehouse. I think that they are, so she's an Amazon employee, and I think they're paying for her to go to this because those warehouses are so big that will actually get a boost in their pay. I guess they allow a certain number of their employees to be EMT certified so that they can have literally first responders, or at least people who can give care inside the warehouse, right away. So it's an interesting strategy for that.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, well, it's Amazon. They're probably the biggest company in the world, right? So they've run it through their lawyers and they know all about, liability and so on. So yeah, it sounds like, like even at the health club, they have the, the portable defibrillators there and so on. I don't know what the extent of their training is. Certainly they're not EMTs. Not for the amount of money they get paid. They're not making hardly anything. But yeah, no, that's good that you're doing it. But remember something, you're going to have to keep up with it for the rest of your life. Techniques change. Matter of fact, let's get back to that guy that I knew from Chicago that was a retired paramedic. So I used to watch a television show, Emergency. Now, Emergency came out in the early 70s. That really influenced a lot of people to become paramedics. So, I remember the call sign KMG 365, Ringer's Lactate and all of this, TKO to keep open. I for some reason remember all of that, right? So we were having a discussion and he's like, yeah, well, we don't do that anymore. Not, some of those things, the terminologies, some of the medicines are no longer used. Things are, developed and progressed since 1972 or whatever. So just bear that in mind, that you're going to have to continue and continue and continue and continue. Just like, what I do with the fighting, there's always new ways of people getting attacked and mugged and so on, or, harmed, let's put it that way. And you have to put that into your, your mental computer here and come up with, solutions and try to preempt all of that and come up with strategies, that'll aid you in protecting yourself. So it's a lifelong thing. That's why, again, harking back to training, no matter who you train with, no matter how old you are, don't think you're too old, because you got to continue to train the rest of your life. The day you stop, okay, then you've given it up. I'm not giving up as far as my knowledge base, as long as I have the mental facility to continue to be, innovative in ways. I'm going to try to do it. So I hope you do the same with your EMT stuff.
Thank you. No, it's a very important reminder for any pursuit, really. All skills are perishable. Whether you're training for self-defense or like I'm also trying to pursue kind of the outdoor skill sets, right? The survival skill sets out in the wilderness. I'm still, like I said, kindergarten level at that, but things, and actually even now I've noticed I've gone back to practice some fire making techniques and things that I was working, and I was much better during the summer because I was outside and I was able to do it more often. Now I just try and go and do it in the garage a little bit, and it's like, oh, I'm getting rusty already. So, I mean, it's the concept of continuing education, which they actually talked about explicitly in this course, that, if you're going to be an EMT, especially if you're working for an EMT company, I think you're required to have like a specific, like maybe 60 hours of additional education for ever so many years, which could be seminars or whatever. But you're right, it's not any of these things, especially when there's hands-on skills. You've got to maintain them. You got to practice them. Just because you were good at them at a certain point. Now, granted, obviously some stuff is a little bit like riding a bicycle, but still, you lose some stuff. You lose some skill. You might hesitate, especially at my age. And that's my big concern, is that, like, I've already noticed a big decline in memory, my ability to recall people's names, or just, whatever names of things. I am very clear that there's a decrease in that ability. So my ability to retain information, that's just going to be another hurdle as part of this. But again, to your point, whatever you're doing, whatever your pursuit, especially if it's something that's important to you, just know that you're going to have to spend a certain amount of time maintaining it. That's just part of the job.
Don't overdo it. Don't have too many irons in the fire, because then you're going to become, the jack of all trades, master of none. And also, if you're going to be playing with sticks and all of that stuff in your garage, you better hope that one of your neighbors is enrolled in fire school or something, in case you burn the block down. I know you, so don't, but yeah, I kind of like, I'm a very good person to give advice on not trying to become the best in the world at many things, because I always had that quest in my mind. I want to be good at this, and you can only excel, you can't really spread yourself that thin unless the things that you're studying are very closely related. And unfortunately for me, none of it, everything I wanted to do was, generally speaking, totally unrelated. Okay. Fighting and pool and music and, before that, electronics. But all of them actually, it gave me, it developed my thought process and helped me learn how to learn. But like you, my memory is very poor, especially with names and things, but you got to continue to plug forward. That's why the one thing I'm going to do now, we were addressing this before we started filming today. I said I wasn't going to mention anything until we get on the podcast. And I'm going to give this a good 3 weeks of attempts ride out the winter here. I'm going to get back into trying to play Pac-Man. Okay. So I have my controller. It's right behind me. Actually, it's in storage here. And, I'm just setting up my laptop, with MAME, M-A-M-E. I think multi-arcade machine emulator it stands for, but MAME has the actual ROMs of all the classic video games through the years. Now I have MAME, but I have older versions of it. So I'm downloading the latest version, and I'm just updating the ROMs, which is going to take a few hours. But yeah, so I think I'm going to try to give it a shot, and maybe that'll help my memory, to think to the past, working on the patterns that I used for Pac-Man. So I think I'm going to give it a shot. No harm, no foul. All it's going to do is cost me a day's worth of downloading. It's, I have everything I need.
Will you have like a USB joystick, or how does that work?
Well, actually, keep on talking. I'll show you.
All right, this will be interesting to see. Tony's going into the closet of mystery, normally where he keeps various punching pads and dead mice.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Hang on. Oh, where did I put it? I must have moved it.
I've seen people who've actually built the full cabinet. So they'll have a full arcade setup, whether it's in their basement or garage or something. I wonder how much it would cost to buy a vintage functioning Pac-Man machine. Obviously it's, I've got to imagine it's got to play differently. Like the hardware is just as important, I would think, as the software.
Well, talking about my memory, I don't remember where the joystick is. I thought it was over here. And again, I think I might have taken it upstairs. Who knows? It doesn't matter. Well,
the joystick is one of the first things that go. Yeah.
Well, let me explain a few things. So years ago, I built my own controller. I built a super big, huge thing. And I heard what you were saying about a vintage. So they make these machines that you can buy, these arcade types of machines, and they're about $3,000 to $4,000. That includes a small PC built in, nothing special, but good enough to run the MAME. But I built a really good joystick, multi-joystick, trackball, and the whole 9 yards. I ended up giving it to Rick Pearl because he liked it so much. And it wasn't, I have a good electronics background. So more importantly, there's a firm, they were called HAP controllers. Now they're called something else, something/HAP. They used to be in Elk Grove Village, and I think they're in Mount Prospect now. So this was super easy for me. I, got all the switches, got all the joysticks and blah, 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 blah. Ordered them, and my gym was no, I don't think I was in Bensonville yet, but it didn't matter. I just drove down to Elk Grove and picked it all up. And built it, put it together. I did have to get one component though, a little interface back then, and I had to order it from the UK, which took about a week. But and it just plugs into your computer, and it was all good. Martin was at the house. We had a UFC thing, and there was a bunch of the guys were there, and they all saw me break over $1 million on Pac-Man then. But yeah, it's interesting. So the controller that I bought, I actually ended up buying a controller from a company, and it's smaller, but it wasn't very, the joysticks were really not arcade quality. So I actually wrote them about it. I said, come on, guys, you sell this shit for $300, can't you at least put top of the line joysticks? I said, I used to hold the world record in Pac-Man. I says, I can't work with these. So I ended up disassembling it, and I bought a very good joystick, a professional model joystick, allegedly the exact joystick that was on the original Pac-Man machines. So that's up. I think I have it upstairs, actually, where my pool table is, come to think of it. But still, using this company's controller, there just seemed to be some lag, some issues, with it not, you go up and it isn't going up. You go down and it isn't going down kind of thing. So that's why I said, I'm going to give this 3 weeks. We'll see how it goes. I could always attempt to buy just a little joystick, which is only going to be 20, 30 bucks, and replace it again. But I think it's the electronics. We'll see. I don't trust my memory. So we're going to, I'll plug it in either later tonight or tomorrow and have a go at it.
I got to imagine, especially when you're playing at a high level, even from location to location. So like back in the day, you had your machine at Mr. Heroes or whatever that you would play, right?
Yeah.
But there's, you go to a machine somewhere else, it's got different wear and tear on it, right? Different people are playing it at different levels, like, especially at the high levels, I'm sure things are moving quickly, and any subtle little response difference has got to make a major difference. I don't know, but I was just questioning, like.
It does. It is. You're 100% right. And to add to that, Pac-Man, in theory, was a simple game using just a joystick. Okay, but there were other games where you had to maybe use a trackball, such as Centipede, or a trackball and buttons. I believe Centipede, you had a trackball and buttons, and other games that used maybe multiple buttons. So now you have that to contend with. Whereas on a Pac-Man, you just have the one joystick. On other machines, you may have multiple things that can go wrong. But yes, the joysticks, because people tend to, Pac-Man was a very, Pac-Man and trackball games, such as Centipede or golf or something, Golden Tee, people can get very abusive with those games, okay? Putting a lot of force, and especially with the joystick. More so than the trackball. The trackball's problem is you get oil from people's hands and you get dirt, and it might get in there, get inside of that. So that can be a real problem, especially if the arcade owner isn't on top of things and doesn't call the gaming company to come out and replace that stuff, because replacing that stuff is not that big of a deal. Okay. Especially switches, buttons. They're like $5, not a big deal. But you're right. Some games just didn't have the right feel. I could get on a joystick and it just didn't feel right. And then I believe that where I learned was Midway Games. Okay. They were the vendor. But I believe there were other companies that used Pac-Man as well. Because Pac-Man was listed under different names. It was actually a Japanese company, and I guess they licensed it to different companies.
So there were like multiple hardware providers in the US?
I believe, well, yes. I don't know if they were stationed in the US, but yeah, there was, I think one was called Pacland, and then different hardware. There was different hacks. Some were speed up hacks. I went to one arcade one time. Now, back in my day, I think you just got 3 lives, and then you'd have to get bonus lives. So I went to one place and it was like, I put in the quarter, I got 5 lives. I'm like, wow, okay. I wish this would have happened from the very beginning. I would have, set the record probably 6 months sooner, with all those extra chances. But yeah, you just have different games. Now, my one buddy was a whiz at, I think it was Galaxian. Okay. And he was also a very, 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 very good bowler. He was a bowling hustler. And we used to go to Cloverleaf Lanes, which is, I wanted to take you there. It's gone in Cleveland. So he'd be hustling bowling while I'm at the pool tables, hustling pool. But we'd go to the arcade, and he'd play his Galaxian and I'd play my Pac-Man. And I used to mess with him because there's places on the Pac-Man board where you can hide him and he won't get eaten. And you can walk away. You can go to the bathroom, you can get something to eat and come back and just, freelance the rest of the board. You don't have a pattern. You have to freelance it. So I would do that a lot. I would just be playing. I get a little tired. I just put it in the safe spot. There was nobody else around, so nobody was going to take my game. So I'd walk over to him and just mess with him, because he couldn't leave. He couldn't leave his game. I could. But he was nowhere. If I played straight through, I'm playing nonstop for a couple hours. Okay. If I recall correctly. Whereas he could never play straight through for a couple hours, but I'll tell you what, though, this guy could bowl. And he was like a couple years older than me. He lived the next street over, actually. And I remember a few years ago, I was living out here, but I was with Scott, and we went over the border to Wisconsin to shoot some pool. And so while we're waiting, I'm telling him about this guy, Brian. And he's like, you should look him up. Because I was planning on going to Cleveland. He's like, look him up. I'm like, I will. And come to find out, he had just passed away. He had cancer, which was terrible and really depressed me. So I'm like, man, I don't want to shoot any pool. I'm kind of sentimental about that stuff. So I didn't want to shoot any pool. So Scott shot pool, and I just sat there kind of in the dumps. And I hadn't seen him in 30 years, but it doesn't matter. He was something from my childhood. And as you know, you've been to Cleveland with me. Pretty much everything from my childhood is gone. It's no longer standing. And that includes people as well as structures. So it kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I've seen it to a lesser degree, but in Chicago too, my neighborhood where I grew up completely changed. The house I grew up is still there, but it looks completely different. People have changed it. So, it doesn't seem familiar to me. The neighborhood's different. Everything, is constantly changing. And you're right. The older we get, the less the people that we have around us, I kind of appreciate why, as people get older, they kind of, they don't necessarily, they're not in touch with the new world that's kind of grown up around them. Everything they knew and they cared about is kind of slipped away. There's a lot less for them, whether it's the music they listen to, all that stuff kind of changes from generation to generation. You have your time here, and that's definitely finite.
Yeah, it most definitely is. It's totally finite. And, I've always been kind of the guy that always like delved into things and really learned. And I also lose interest quickly on things that, that I don't have that deep care for. So I'm glad about that, because I know a lot of people. Matter of fact, here, I was reading something, and it was an actress/actor coach. And she said that she had this guy who was really studious. He was an acting student. And she said, he was intelligent, this and that, whatever, but he just didn't have the ability. He wasn't natural at it. He was very stiff. He just couldn't do it. And then she started wondering, what's my problem? I can't reach this guy. I can't get through to him. So eventually he quit, and he went on to study with some other famous instructor who was considered at the time maybe the best classical acting instructor in the world. I think he was some Spanish man. And he studied hard with him, and the same thing. He failed with him. And the student ended up completely leaving the business. He never got one professional acting job. So he studied in all for about 4 or 5 years and never got one acting gig out of it. So, okay, there's two ways of looking at it. Whoever this gentleman is, Mr. X, you could say he had perseverance, or was he just, kind of like a numbskull, just so hard-headed that he didn't realize that this isn't going anywhere. So I've been lucky that I lose interest. And it isn't because of hard work that I can't do it, because obviously, I've done a lot of hard work. It's just that once I start to see that this isn't for me, I can assess myself and I can say, hey, look, I'm limited here. I'm never going to take this very far. So I walk away from it. So I'm lucky there. I haven't wasted years on something. Maybe in hindsight, the music, but that was kind of taken from me. But my appreciation and my love for music, it continues to grow. So I don't look at that as waste. But I just don't, honestly, I don't want to see a lot of people waste their time, because you're right. We have a finite amount of time here. Okay. You could blow $1,000 on gambling today and walk outside and maybe find $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 or something like that, right? Or get a job, and all of a sudden you have this income coming in. But you can't do that with time. Nobody can actually give you an extension of time. So time is, to me, the most precious commodity I think that we have.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. Like you said, it's you might be able to extend your life by working out a little bit or eating right, but although I'll say this, like for your friend or the person you knew who was acting, who, I mean, sometimes you love something or you have an interest of something that you're just not good at, and even if it's kind of like he stepped up to the plate and he swung and he missed, but at least he could say when he looks back, is like, hey, I gave it a shot. This was something I was interested in. I went to the best instructors. I gave it 5 years of my life, and maybe, who knows what the end destination for him was. I mean, what is success? Because I look at like my crappy Brock band that I'm in. We're probably still going to be. We're never going to completely pay off our instruments from the money we make from.
Yeah.
But do we love getting together? Do we love the environment and hanging out about it? To me, it's the journey. Like, I've always been a fan of music. I mean, you and I like different music, but I think we still have a love of, in general, we have a love of music. And I'll say this, I didn't even think I was at the point where I didn't think I had the ability to play music. Like, I had piano lessons as a kid and hated it. And so I was already middle. Actually, it's funny because it parallels a lot with some of my fight training to a degree, where I started it a lot later than most people do in their lives. And so there's already kind of a limit to how much I'm going to achieve, right? I'm not going to fulfill my true potential with it, but doesn't mean it doesn't have value to me. It doesn't add to my life. So it's tricky. I saw this one band, this punk band called The Queers. And for a long time, I used to think like if you're in a band and let's say you're in it for, like you said, like 4 or 5 years, you really haven't made a hit, or you haven't hit some level of success, maybe it's time to think about moving on. But this band this punk band, I saw them playing. It was really cool. It's actually at a bowling alley, the Fireside Bowl. It's on Fullerton, actually, not too far from.
Isn't it on Diversey?
It was like just a couple blocks west of, is it Quenchers? It was right like by Western Avenue. But anyways,
Yeah.
generally where
I've been there. Yeah. I bowled out of there. Yeah.
Yeah. And but they used to have music shows there. And so what they did is they set up a stage at the far end. So everybody would be standing basically perpendicular to the bowling lane. So they blocked off the bowling lanes. No one was standing there. So everybody was just kind of standing, room only, kind of where the seats were, where you'd sit, where you're going to bowl, just a little small. But this band had so much energy. They had so much fun. So I'm saying they're playing this crappy little place, but they were good. And I said, these guys were already middle-aged. They were good. They had energy. They love what they're doing. They're never going to quit their day jobs, make it playing these kind of venues. But once in a while, like, I don't know, they just go on a tour. They play these little venues with the people who love them. And they had a great time. And it kind of changed my perspective on it, that sometimes you can have a hobby and maybe not, and just the act of doing it is the reward itself. However far you can take that thing that you love, I don't know. It's just a different thought about it.
Well, music and acting are completely, two different things. I don't know this guy that I was mentioning. I just read about it, but music, I used to volunteer and play at nursing homes and things like that, retirement communities. But you can also just entertain yourself or entertain your loved one. If you try to just start acting on your own and somebody catches you doing that, you're going to be in a mental institution. Okay. If you're walking down the street thinking you're John Wayne, oh my goodness. But you get my point. Music is it can be very medicinal. Well, it's very psychological because music has been used as a psychological attack. I don't remember if you recall David Koresh, the Waco wild man. But the FBI, I believe it was pumping loud heavy metal or whatever trash music all hours of the night, just to mess with them psychologically.
I think they did that to
And
Manuel Noriega too, right? Do you remember when?
well, and yes, and they've done it to plants. They've played heavy metal music piped into plants, and the plants died. And they've at the same time other plants, exact same plants, types of plants, classical music, and the plants thrived. So there's something to music. Okay, there's no question about it. I mean, I'm not saying there's nothing to acting, because a good movie has, or acting in general, has motivated people and has compelled people to, get an education perhaps, or get into a certain career. So it can be very motivating. But I'm just saying in general, there's times when you just have to realize, hey, I got to give it up. Especially if you have a family and, okay, you spent all this time doing something and you failed because apparently this guy wanted to be a professional actor and he never could do it. So now let's say he gets off on another jaunt. Now maybe he wants to be something else. Is his family saying, oh boy, here we go again? So yes, you do need perseverance, but I think, and we've talked about this ad nauseum on the show, you need a good instructor that's going to sit there and really finally tell you, look, I don't think you have it. I don't think you have the ability or the whatever. And in case I'm wrong, get a second opinion. Go to someone else, and let them assess you as well. So, because I know from personally, there's just certain, like, okay, getting back to Pac-Man, there was a Ms. Pac-Man as well. I played Ms. Pac-Man a handful of times in my life, less than 100, probably 40, 50 times. You think it's the same thing as Pac-Man. It was, in a way, with the joystick, but I just didn't like Ms. Pac-Man. I just didn't have it. Whatever it was, you would think I could just transition over to Ms. Pac-Man. Now, maybe if there was money involved, lots of money, and somebody sponsored me, I'd have had the dedication to do it. But I just, said, no, I don't find any enjoyment in this. I'm going to walk away from it. And ironically, when Pac-Man was phasing out, a lot of these gamers, they'll transition to the newest game or a different game, something like that. I just walked away from all of it for the most part. I just said, well, I'm back to shooting pool here. Pool is really my destiny. So yeah, I knew enough to say, now I'm not gonna go through all of this again.
Gaming's tough because there's a lot of relearning. Like I kind of had a similar moment. I was never any kind of a record setter, but the game that my buddies and I mean, I grew up kind of in the same era you did. So I had all the arcade games like Pac-Man and Galaga, Space Invaders. I loved all that shit, but I really didn't get competitive with it. There's a PC game, a first-person shooter called Quake. And then there was various versions, Quake 1, Quake 2, Quake 3. Quake 3 came out and the graphics were gorgeous at that time. Just couldn't believe it. And so the guys at work, so obviously I worked in IT, so, had a bunch of computer nerds. So after work, we'd have a computer network there. We even set up a server that would rotate. And basically you have this kind of spacey map that you'd run through and you're shooting each other. And it was and you'd rack up scores. And eventually we found additional programs. They had add-on programs that you could get where it would actually show your statistics. So it would say, well, who had the most amount of kills, who was best at this weapon. It had all these statistics. It was almost like, like fantasy football kind of stuff where you'd get the numbers. And then it got real because then we had numbers behind what we were doing. We could quantitatively say, I'm better than you. This is, and
Okay.
and it heated up. So we would spend an hour to 2 hours a day after work for about a year playing each other. And we got good. Like we should have gone out and competed. Now, I don't know, honestly, because I never really tested it. This was kind of before people were playing games like this on the internet. So this was like before Xbox and things like that. But that exact moment happened for me. I'd kind of gotten to the level where I was probably the best in the group that we had kind of consistently. I had a lot of great moments. I remember there was this one guy who was a real asshole at work. And so what happened is when you were done with the job, we always had the server running in the background. So you just had to start up the program on your computer and you just jump in, you start running around. Well, I jumped in and this asshole jumped in, this guy that nobody liked. And I just destroyed him. Like I just was merciless on him, where it was like a complete shutout. And I would say within 15, 20 minutes, so that because he sat in a cube not too far, but literally he took his headphones off, threw them to the ground. He's like, "What's the point?" And then stormed off and ran home. He left for the day. So that was it was kind of a good thing for the team. There's a lot of funny stories with that where we had, but anyways, my point being, to your point with video games, is so my kids got the first Xbox, and the game that was real popular, you've probably heard of, is Halo. Very similar. It's a first-person shooter game. Now, but there's different controllers, right? So there's handheld controllers. I was used to using a mouse and keyboard, but my kids were getting into this. So I'm like, well, maybe I can play this with them. And it literally was like completely starting over. I was stumbling. I mean, I had the strategies that I had learned from my other game, but all the mechanics and the eye-hand coordination was relearning. And I'm like, and it was that moment of decision where I'm like, am I going to spend the next year of my life putting in 1,000 hours to get back to where I was, on this new platform? And I just said, it's not worth it. It is not worth it to go through. There was a lot of sacrifice and frustration to get to where I was on Quake on the PC. And I'm like, I'm not going to do it again, because it was entertainment, but it's like, what am I getting out of this? I could be playing an instrument or learning a language. I could be doing something else with that time. It was literally like a stake in the line. I was like, I'm not going to, it was like, that was my point. It was a no go decision. And I'm like, I can't do it again. I just can't commit to that. It's not worth it.
Well, I was in Chicago about, I don't know how many months, X amount of months, 8 months, 7 months, it doesn't matter. And I ended up roommating with this guy, and he became addicted to, he had a Sega, and him and I both ended up becoming, he got literally addicted, so much so that he lost his job. But we both became masters of a game called Shinobi. All right. Now, I don't remember, I wouldn't know how to play it anymore, but we mastered it. There was no way to, but this guy became so addicted to all of this. Like I said, he ended up losing his job. And back then he was a manager. He was making over 40 grand a year back then, which was a lot of money in like 1988, 87, 88. But now and then I would get, I was really good at shuffle bowling, puck bowling, and certain pinball games where I would just, play pinball. And anything, I'm not a gambler, but I gamble on things that I can control. Okay, like pool or pinball, So you want to play for some money? We'll do it. You want to play for drinks? We'll do it. Now pool is pool, but pinball, it's specific to that machine. So, every pinball game, you've got to invest a lot of time, at least a month or so, getting the machine down, but I remember playing, somebody challenged me to Pacman. He owned a bar and he had a Pacman, a cocktail table. You sat down, one of those sit down ones. And so that your opponent's across from you. Now, I don't like those, but I can play them. So he knew about my reputation. So he's like, well, I want you to play left-handed. I said, I'm not going to, forget it. It's not, no bet, no deal, nothing. I said, because that's not even fair, because I'm not ambidextrous. I never even attempted to do it left-handed. My muscle functions, the control isn't going to be there. I says, I can spot you in a different way. And he's like, what? I says, well, I just won't use any patterns. So like, he said, well, how will I know? I said, well, simple. When the screen starts, I won't move. I'll just, kind of keep it static, so to speak. I'll stall out. And I said, but I won't do that every screen. That's ridiculous. I said, I'll do it every every 5 screens, I'll do it. So, I had to handicap him that way, which was kind of challenging. And I kind of banked on the fact that he didn't get to the 9th key, which he didn't. So it was okay to beat him. It was easy to beat him, but I don't think I could have beat him if I had to play left-handed, because I don't think I've ever even tried left-handed. Now, and that made me think, because I told you at Mr. Heroes, the guy that owned it was martial artist, Man Beck. And I don't remember now, but I almost want to think he was left-handed, that he used the joystick left-handed. I'm curious. There's no way to find out because that was 40 years ago, but and it doesn't really matter. But yeah, he was a pretty good player. He was like 230,000 range, which was above average. Okay. Probably like really, I mean, nobody broke 300,000 unless you were a super serious player. Okay. So yeah, he was pretty good. And he would have been certainly someone that I would have gambled with as a partner. I think we could have done all right. And we could have kicked everybody's ass anyway. So it would have been, physically. He was a lot older than me. He's probably would have been my mom's age, or something like that. I don't know. But he was like an 8th degree, 9th degree black belt, from Korea. Interesting. Last I heard, which was 30 years ago, I heard he was living in California.
Yeah, well, maybe he's listening. You should give us a shout out if he's out there.
Man Beck and his brother Moon. Yeah, no, it's interesting. But there was a guy in Cleveland. His name was Mickey Burns, because I remember that because I knew an old time boxer named Mickey Burns. I never met this young Mickey Burns or whatever he was, but he was supposed to be the hotshot Space Invader champion. He was supposed to be the best Space Invader player in Cleveland. I don't remember what his scores were, but they were in the tens of thousands, Space Invaders just always seemed like a simple game. And I just never, I was never very good at it. Once again, I was limited to the games I played. There was a lot of games that I actually wasn't very good at and had more fun than when I was really good at Pac-Man. Because when I was really good at Pac-Man, it became like there was no more success. If you follow me, there was only levels of failure. Okay.
Sure.
Because I got so good that,
yeah. I mean, yeah. The stress of performing. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I already took it to the maximum. So if I don't take it to the maximum every time, I failed. And, once you've taken it to the maximum, there's no more mystery left. So yeah, when I would play games like Centipede and Man Beck was good at Frogger because we used to have a Frogger and a Pac-Man. So, when I played games like that, I sucked at it, but it was just it was fun. It was fun. And Pac-Man, I don't think was fun for me anymore. And it may not even be fun for me again, but with the MAME emulator, if I want to play Galaxian or Galaga, whatever, I can do it. I can play Frogger. I can't play Centipede because I don't have a trackball. But just something to spend the next few weeks doing, just to get my mind off of everything else.
Were you a fan of Asteroids?
Yeah, that's another one. Asteroids, and I wasn't very good at it. There was another one. I was a Tempest or something with you had to have a trackball.
Was it the thing that would move around? It was like a little.
Yeah, and it was like you were. It looked like you were in the bottom of a funnel, like a 3-dimensional funnel or something. I don't remember the name of that right now. And then there was another one called Space Command or something.
Missile Command, was that? Do you remember that?
Missile Command. That's it. I remember Missile Command. Tetris. Let's see. There was a Galaga, and then there was some Phoenix. Now I liked Phoenix better than I did Galaga. Or Galaga and Galaxian, I think, are the same. They changed the names, but those were fun. I wasn't any good. Like I told you, my friend Brian was really good, and I'd sit there and watch him, and I'm like, God, man, you're really pretty. You're like I am on Pac-Man, which is like great to watch him and shit. And I could have picked his brain. I could have simply asked him, okay, tell me the tricks. Because all of these games have tricks. They all had built-in like hacks. With Pac-Man, it was mastering the patterns.
And that's the thing I don't think kids appreciate today is that you can now go on the internet and find those things. Like that information, like how did you find out these patterns and things like that? You had just you by trial and error, or was there some magazines that you'd pick up occasionally?
Okay, so good question. So the initial patterns, Mark Anderson, this guy that we have to talk about one day on the show, who changed my life. He's the one who taught me Pacman. He's the one who showed me Pacman, and I kind of memorized. I had a very good memory back then. I could watch it, and I kind of memorized some of the patterns. Okay, but he did not have a pattern for anything above the ninth key. There was another kid in the neighborhood. His name, believe it or not, was Stevie Miller, and Steve Miller was very good at Pacman too. Not quite as good as Mark, about maybe 10, 15,000, 20,000 points less. So I kind of took off on Mark's patterns. I used because we couldn't crack the ninth key. Nobody could. So I would start experimenting with Mark's patterns, his basic patterns, and all of a sudden I could start to score more points. Well, I got really, really good to the point where, okay, I've got to get past this ninth key, because there was a bunch of rumors and speculation about what would happen. And so I said, damn it, I'm going to figure it out. So what I did was I would I'd get to a certain point, and then I would watch what's happening and really focus more on, okay, let me see if I go this way, what's going to happen. Nope, I got eaten. What if I go this way? Well, I made it a little further. So then trial and error and time consuming. You're talking, hour after hour just to get to the ninth key over and over and over again. So finally I cracked it. I came up with the ninth key pattern, and I thought there was another variation somewhere down the line too. Once again, sadly, I don't recall everything. Once I start playing, we'll see if it comes back to me. So yeah, I actually took notes. I bought a book that actually had a blank pattern, the maze, the Pac-Man thing. Yeah. So I took it to school. I had it blown up, and then I had a bunch of copies I had made. So I would actually just start drawing. I took them with me. So I would draw how far I got, and then, what happened here. Okay. So that's how I ended up getting good. Just trial and error. Nobody in the world showed me any ninth key patterns or anything like that. Any of the advanced patterns. And as I said, by the time I was a senior in high school, I was, I won the Pacman championship and all of that jazz. And it's really quite interesting. And I was nervous, really nervous, because I was like one of the only kids in this tournament, believe it or not, even though it was held at a Chuck E. Cheese.
Was that like in downtown Cleveland somewhere? Or?
It was in the west, south side. It was by Randall Park Mall. It used to be there. It was at the Chuck E. Cheese. And I ended up going in the finals against this adult guy. I don't remember how old he was, probably 30. I don't know. To me, that was like 90, and I crushed his ass, and he didn't take it well, and here I won a bike. I won a vest. I think I won an album, and I won I think it was $100 in tokens, for Chuck E. Cheese.
Now, if you
which was great.
That, yeah.
Well, no, and then 2 weeks later, because my friend lived not far from Chuck E. Cheese, Garfield Heights, or he lived in Maple Heights actually. So I told you now, I'm a senior in high school. So I drive over to his house. Let's go to Chuck E. Cheese. Well, they won't let me in because Chuck E. Cheese, you had to be 18, under 18, you had to be accompanied by an adult. I said, I'm your Pac-Man world champion here. I just won your goddamn Pac-Man thing 2 weeks ago. Here's all the tokens. You're not going to let me in? They wouldn't let me in. It was kind of ironic, wasn't it? I just won their tournament. Now they won't let me in because I'm underage. For Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you dirty rat, but those were good old days. Oh, that's another thing I was really good at was this Night Driver, I think. It was a race car, black and white race car thing. You sat down, you sat in it, and it just got to the point where it was all memorization. and just you're going blistering fast. It was unbelievable. I got really, really good at that. If there was any championships, I probably would have entered it, but I didn't see any championships for night. I think it was called Night Driver or Night Racer or something. I would have probably done extremely well in any kind of competition. So but for sure, Pac-Man was the most popular video game at that time. It superseded Space Invaders, who really kicked it all off as far as arcade games, not like Pong, which I think was the first. But yeah, those were good old days when you were young. You had the world ahead of you, and I think it was inspiring for me because at that time I was pretty much wrapping up my wrestling training and everything, because I had been doing that for years. And I just walked around with a sense of not arrogance, but a sense of pride. Hey, I can fight as good as anybody. I can play Pac-Man as good as anybody. I thought, man, I could do anything, and then, when you realize the world itself it seems it's designed to devour people, right? And as the years went on, I found out, Jesus, man, it's a lot easier to fight and it's a lot easier to play Pac-Man than it is to conquer the world, because I didn't do such a good job at it, So it's just, the world throws you a lot of curveballs. I'll tell you that right now. So my advice is to eke out whatever you can, whatever little tidbit of enjoyment that you can get out of it, take it. We're here finite, like Joe says, finite, although your looks are infinite, I think.
Well, now, yeah, forever, for all posterity on the interwebs, these videos really are, that's the real value of this when it comes down to, is recording that. So,
well, this is eternity.
Generations. Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the benefits of living in the modern age. Now we can record this for future generations. So you're welcome, I guess what I'm saying is to everybody.
Yes. The world is a better place.
But it's interesting, kind of, there's all, I don't know what themes I'm pulling out, but we can kind of talk about that failed actor, and like what I was thinking about that earlier, about like the balance between life and hobbies. And I had a conversation with some friends just yesterday, actually, talking about, can you be a great man and also be a good man? So I think you can, but I think it often is rare. I think, for instance, to be great at something, to really achieve a great status at something, you have to dedicate a ton of time, and a lot of other things have to be sacrificed for that. I think because you're kind of mentioning like this actor guy, he puts in 4 or 5 years and really tries, and it goes nowhere. His family's got to, okay, are you going to do that again for something else? I mean, at a certain point, all these things that we have, unfortunately, society, values certain things over others. So, you could be the world's greatest, Pac-Man player, but the best that's going to give you is maybe a bicycle, some unusable Chuck E. Cheese tokens, and a pat on the back, right? I mean, you did it for yourself, right? And that's true about a lot. I mean, how do you balance your passions and interests? What can you get out of that? And that's, it's something I think every person has to figure out. And if you've got some consuming passion where you're going to put all your time in, and it's no guarantee that you're going to make a living out of it, you've got to think about that and consequences for your other decisions. Do you put off raising a family, until you're able to focus and give them the time that they need? This is a tricky thing about life. And I don't know. I don't know if you get where I'm going at, but
I do. And the quagmire is the definition of good and great. What's a great man? What's a good man or woman? And it's such a judgment call, because I've known a lot of great men. Okay. I mean, they were the leaders in their field. Okay. And I've known a lot of who I thought were like just average Joes, but good men, good-hearted, caring. But you talk to somebody else and they'll say, oh no, this guy was a first-rate jagoff. He did this, he did that. You get all these different kind of opinions and so on. So I learned early on that I don't really care about the judgment of things. I'm more a nuts and bolts kind of guy. So what I mean by that is this. I know that certain people I can rub people the wrong way. I'm a black and white kind of guy. You either love me or you hate me kind of thing. And I know a lot of guys that are just like me. But there are things about me that you cannot debate. Okay. Like if I drop down now and give you 100 push-ups, well, you can't debate that. Those were 100 push-ups. All right. The number's there. Unless you're a jerk off and try to say, oh, his form. But the point is, I always focused my life on concrete things. I want to be able to do something that's beyond debatable. Okay. This is an absolute fact because everything else in our lives, and this goes for anybody, really boils down to judgment. How do you feel today? You may act differently if you don't feel well, or the person on the receiving end may accept your personality in a different way if they're not feeling well. So I find a lot of folks get hung up on that. They want you to like them so much that it actually becomes a form of acting. They're not really themselves. And that happens awful lot in relationships, especially in the beginning of relationships where people may not even be putting up a front per se, but everything is going rosy. Everything is great. You're all euphoric. Well, wait till the bottom falls out, or wait till you hit a crisis before you start rushing into things, and seeing how the person really is. And then you can really tell if the person's a good man or a good woman or not, in your mind. That's how I look at it, because I've seen a lot of bullshit artists, guys coming out maybe in a bar, buying everybody drinks, celebrating this and that, and then I know one guy in particular, him as well. I'm not going to mention his name, but come the first of the month, that's what he does. He goes out and buys for everybody. 10 days later, he's hitting me up for money. Okay. So everybody thinks he's great, but it's an act. You know who I'm talking about. So,
well, yeah.
But anyway,
yeah, the classic example is the guy. And actually I had a boss like this where he was the greatest, for everybody outside. I always said this boss reminded me of what it must be to be like in an abusive home, because outside of the department, everybody loved him. He was the nicest, happiest guy. He'd say yes. But when we'd close our doors in the department and he needed stuff done, he would throw any of us under the bus. If any of us, like he was, and I've seen that with, certain abusive parents or whatever, where they go out and they're everybody's buddy outside. But when they come home and you see the real them, where they let it all hang out, there's two sides to their personality. There's the
Right.
facade that they put out there, and then there's what they do, and what they let out. And yeah, I mean, when I say a good person and a great person, you're right. I mean, even a really good guy. I mean, some of the best people I know, no one's perfect. They're going to have bad days. They're going to be asshole. Everybody's got a little bit of asshole in them. And they shouldn't be defined by, you can't say someone's 100% good person or 100% bad person. Even the worst
Right.
person is going to have some good moments and do some good things. So, I mean, yeah, life is complicated and it's not black and white as far as judgment persons, but it's also, yeah, are you doing it for others, or are you doing it for yourself? Am I doing certain things so that I feel good about myself? Am I living my life the way I want to? So to me,
Correct.
like, do I define, making sure my kids were successful? Is that, and what do I consider that? Is that something I can hang my hat on? Those are things, and maybe people don't see it, or whatever, don't acknowledge it. I mean, ultimately, and that goes back to like the actor or the musician who hasn't sold, hasn't had a gold record, or doesn't, that doesn't get name recognition. Are they pleased with what they did? Did they succeed and knock out what they did? So, and I think that's ultimately what it got to do. Are you happy with your own success and what you've tried to achieve and given a swing at? So, but you're right. It's not, these are kind of meaning of life kind of questions. And I think everybody has to answer them for themselves, but, right. Yeah. It's not straightforward, any of those.
No, it's a judgment, and I, I think, I mean, most of them, talk about musicians, all the great musicians that I know, they had a bit of, I don't want to say resentment, but, they were undiscovered, I guess you'd say, or they never made the big time. Okay. In essence, but they're not alone. There's even some like in the jazz world that made it in the big time. Well, there's very few that in the jazz world that really made it big, big. I mean, Oscar Peterson is arguably, the greatest jazz pianist of our generation, but how many people actually outside of jazz know who the guy was, or Art Tatum or somebody like that? You have crossovers like Buddy Rich, because he was on the Tonight Show so much, and Merv Griffin Show and Mike Douglas and all those television shows, so he, I would say he made it everlasting, but, I never thought, when I played music, I never thought about becoming world famous being a musician. I wanted to make an album, that I did. I never did make an album, but that's what I wanted to. I wanted to be on an album, which never happened. But I played with some, as some Grammy winners and shit. So, I mean, to me, I think that's pretty good. Nobody may remember me or know of me or anything. So what? Many times when I'm listening to a music on a movie, okay, any movie, and you have an orchestra soundtrack, these are world-class musicians, man. And I don't know any of their names, okay? Yet they're mind-blowingly good. And like I say, with rare exceptions, I don't know anybody's name that's playing on that soundtrack. So they help make this movie more enjoyable because of their musicianship. Same with the composers, Lionel Newman or somebody from, years ago, Hugo Friedhofer. Who knows of these people? What do they look like even? Nobody knows, or unless you're really in the business. Dominic Frontieri, one of the greatest accordionists of all time, ended up becoming a big time music. He was the head of, I think it was Mercury Wing or one of the movies. He was in charge of all of that. He did the soundtrack for On Any Given Sunday and The Outer Limits and Vegas, the TV show Vegas. And, he ended up marrying, Georgia Rosenblum, who became Georgia Frontieri, that owned the Rams. He ended up doing time for income tax evasion because he was selling scalp tickets. Whatever. I mean, but Dominic Frontieri was a monster musician. Most people didn't know who he was. So kind of like what I do, fighters, martial arts, we're a niche, especially what I do is a sub niche. So a lot of people don't know me, or they have heard my name, don't know my face. I don't care. I never did this to become world famous, in that regard. I know people who want that fame. I had one student tell me, I want to be able to walk through an airport and everybody knows who I am. I said, well, then you're in the wrong line of work, because nobody's following this sport enough especially at that time, 20 years ago. Nobody's, you're not a movie star. They don't have that kind of audience reach back then, especially. So, it is what it is. But I think that is a bit of narcissism on certain people's part, if that's what they want to be. And if that's what you want, go for it. I'm not necessarily looking for that. It's too late for me anyhow. I'm almost 60. But I did my things for my own reasons. And I think that's most important. I think if everybody has their own internal reasons for doing it, that doesn't depend on someone else. Ergo, if you want to become famous, you have to depend on not just somebody else, but like millions of else's, okay? Millions of people. But if you're doing it for your own personal reasons, then that's fine, I think. For me, I just wanted to be able to defend myself against anybody, and talking about Pacman, I wanted to be able to beat everybody at Pacman. So it was, that's all I cared about. But as the clock on the wall is showing, it's about time for us to wrap this up, buddy. I sure hope everybody that was supposed to appear today and their families are feeling better. I'm battling the cold, but I think I'm going to win in a couple of more days, 3-4 days. I'll be back to normal. Colds normally take, like I say, 7 days. For me, it seems to sometimes take 10. So by midweek or so, I should be all right.
Yep. Hope everybody feeling better. It was a good talk today again.
Yeah, off the cuff. Well, guys, we'll see you all next week. Thanks once again for watching. And if you see it, don't let an arcade go by without stopping in and throwing in whatever it is, a quarter. I don't know. Maybe they jacked it up. Dollars now. All right, guys, take it easy.
Bye.